In October 2020, I lost my youngest son, Fergus, to suicide, and he was 18. I had previously lost a very good friend to suicide before that. It was kind of a very different experience, losing a child in particular. In terms of suicide bereavement as against different types of bereavement, I think there's the shock element. That was something that, you know, obviously was quite difficult, very difficult to deal with. But I think there's a lot of, what I've realised over time is there's a lot of stigma for the person who's gone and the people that are left behind as well. And I think that definitely doesn't help with the grieving process. It really compounds the bereavement. And, you know, I think it just takes a long time to kind of not even come to terms with it, but just wrap your head around what's happened. I guess it's kind of similar to any kind of sudden bereavement. If somebody's murdered, if somebody, you know, it's kind of, I would kind of put it on a par with that. It's brutal. I think the other thing is that what I had no idea about in the beginning are the physical aspects of a shocking death like that. And I think that even now, nearly 3 years on, there are physical symptoms that I get where I was incredibly healthy before, and there are things that not just me, but the rest of the family have kind of had to deal with. So I had bereavement counselling really early on, the very early days, which came through the NHS, that came through my GP. That was all right. I don't really remember any of it, actually, so I couldn't tell you whether it was any good or not. Then I had more counselling, which was also NHS, which was a really bad experience. It was a counsellor who was not trained around suicide, who made very questionable comments about things. I had come across Suicide&Co because I think the thing about losing somebody to suicide is that you go into that world. You've gone through the curtain, so you kind of, you know, you start to read lots of things and you start to look for the resources that are there and make connections with other people. And so I was aware of Suicide&Co from Instagram, I think. And I think one day I just looked at what Suicide&Co offered and thought, the thing that I need is somebody to talk to who is trained around suicide. So you don't have to keep explaining yourself. You don't have to explain all the circumstances around it, that somebody will just get it kind of straight away. So that was really compelling. And I just think I was at a point where I hadn't had any support. I'd had this bad experience, hadn't had any support for a while, and I was starting to struggle again. And I think that it was just timely. You know, it was like, I'd found you on Instagram, the counselling was going to kind of do what I needed it to do, and so there was no reason for me not to do it. And in fact, my husband's done it as well. He's also used Suicide&Co, so it's been really good for us as a family. For me, the outcome of it was, I mean, it was helpful. It was kind of, I talked to the counsellor a lot about guilt, which is a big thing with suicide that people carry who are left behind. She was really able to help me with that. And we were able to get to it quickly because of the reasons I mentioned, that she was already kind of an expert in that field, if you like. So we were able to get into the nitty-gritty quite quickly. So I look back on that as just a really positive experience for me. I think it's about addressing a need, and I think it's something, as I mentioned, that's not there in the NHS now. And I think there's a real opportunity with Suicide&Co to fill that gap. And so to provide that service, I think, is just essential.